Hey Grace Posse, welcome back to the Daily Devotion. I hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to be, our focal passage is going to come from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 1, which says, "You receive from us instruction as to how you ought to walk and please God." Today we're just going to talk about faith's best. Genesis chapter 4 verses 1 through 4 says, "Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. Again, she gave birth to his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground, and Abel on his part brought the firstlings of his flock and their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offerings." Now let's look also into Hebrews chapter 11, which is the Faith Hall of Fame. So we're going to kind of spend a little bit of time in Hebrews 11 during this talk about faith. Hebrews 11:4 says, "Now by faith Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained the testimony that he was righteous, God testifying about his gifts, and through faith, though he was dead, he still speaks." When the author of Hebrews, when Paul here, again, I believe Paul to be the writer of the book of Hebrews, says that he is going to talk about men of old, he isn't kidding. He goes all the way back, almost all the way to the beginning, to the second born child of the world, Abel, the son of Adam and Eve. We learned real quick that Abel is a man of faith, while his brother Cain was a man of sight. We see that from their offerings that because Abel brought what God required, Cain brought what would look good in a fruit basket. Of course, the primary way we know these things is that God accepted Abel's sacrifice and rejected Cain's. What we have here is an issue of faith and obedience. God had revealed to Adam's family that worship was important. We know that because they worshiped, they must have had a place for worship because the sons brought forth their offerings to a place. We also know that there had a time of worship in the course of time, or the appointed time, as we see in verse 3. So both Cain and Abel went to an appointed place at an appointed time, but only one offering was acceptable to God. Abel brought the kind of offering God wanted. He brought a blood offering. Abel sacrificed a sheep from his flock. That means the boys had learned from their mother and their father what and how they ought to do and how they ought to walk and please God. They knew blood was the only way by which God would forgive sin. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin, as Paul tells us in Hebrews 9:22. But only Abel acted out of faith on what he had learned. A blood sacrifice would be costly. But Abel knew that is what God wanted, and he was willing to give his best. Cain just simply went out into the field, found some of his produce, picked it, and brought it. It was really leftovers. Didn't cost him much at all. A couple of apples out of a bushel don't amount to much. Abel brought the best of his flock. He brought the choice. He offered God the sacrifice of faith. And because of it, God is still talking about Abel. Think about it. Wouldn't it be great to have the kind of faith God bragged about? You could have it, but only by giving Him your best and not your leftovers. God bless you guys, and I'll see you next time.